They ask me if I'm comfortable here. The nurses, I mean. They're kind, truly kind, not the performative sort. They check my blood pressure twice a day, bring me tea without my asking. Remember that I don't like sugar. They call me dear or Patricia or sometimes Mrs. Morrison, though I haven't felt like a Mrs. in the 4 years since Raymond died. I tell them yes, I'm fine, I'm comfortable, and I am in the technical sense. The room is warm, the radiator hisses gently in winter. The bed is soft enough that my hips don't ache the way they used to. There's a window that looks out over a courtyard where pigeons gather in the morning, pecking at breadcrumbs someone scatters from the kitchen. I don't tell them that comfort was never really the question. I don't tell them that comfort is a luxury I learned to live without so long ago that its presence now feels almost foreign, like a language I used to speak but have mostly forgotten. I was 7 when my parents died. Influenza, both of them, within 3 days of each other in the bitter winter of 1949. I remember my mother's face in the lamplight the last time I saw her conscious, pale and damp, her eyes glassy with fever. She tried to smile at me. She said something I couldn't hear. My father had already stopped responding by then. He lay in the bed across the room, breathing in shallow, rattling gasps. I remember my aunt, my mother's older sister, standing in the doorway of our flat 2 days after the funeral, her face tight and pale, her coat buttoned to the throat against the cold. She told me to pack my things. I had so few things that it didn't take long. A change of clothes, a stuffed rabbit my father had won at a fair, a book of fairy tales my mother used to read to me before bed. My aunt took me in because there was no one else. I understood that even then, young as I was, her house was clean, orderly, smelling always of boiled cabbage and laundry soap. There was always food on the table, though never much of it. Rations were still tight, meat was scarce. We ate a lot of potatoes, a lot of bread. She wasn't cruel. She didn't raise her voice or her hand. She didn't lock me in closets or withhold meals or do any of the dramatic, visible things that would have marked her as a villain in someone else's story. But she also never called me her daughter. I was the girl, or your cousin, when she spoke to her own children. 2 boys, both older than me. At night, after supper and the washing up, I could hear her tucking them in, singing softly, her voice carrying through the thin walls. My door stayed closed. The light in my room went out when I turned it out, and no one came to say goodnight. I learned early that love is not distributed equally and that some debts are never spoken aloud. I learned that you can be fed and clothed and sheltered and still feel like a guest in your own life, tolerated but not welcomed, necessary but not cherished. I learned to be quiet, to be grateful for what I had, to never ask for more. I left school at 14 to work in a textile factory on the edge of town. My hands were small enough to manage the fine threads, quick enough to keep pace with the machines. The noise was constant, a roar that left my ears ringing for hours after my shift ended. The air was thick with lint and dust. By the end of each day, my fingers were raw, my back ached, and my lungs felt coated. They ask me if I'm comfortable here. The nurses, I mean. They're kind, truly kind, not the performative sort. They check my blood pressure twice a day, bring me tea without my asking. Remember that I don't like sugar. They call me dear or Patricia or sometimes Mrs. Morrison, though I haven't felt like a Mrs. in the 4 years since Raymond died. I tell them yes, I'm fine, I'm comfortable, and I am in the technical sense. The room is warm, the radiator hisses gently in winter. The bed is soft enough that my hips don't ache the way they used to. There's a window that looks out over a courtyard where pigeons gather in the morning, pecking at breadcrumbs someone scatters from the kitchen. But we needed the money. Or rather, my aunt needed the money, and I needed a roof over my head, and those two facts were intertwined in ways neither of us ever spoke about directly. I didn't mind the work, not really. It gave me something that was mine, a wage, a purpose, a reason to wake before dawn and move through the world as though I belonged in it. The other girls at the factory were kind to me. We ate our lunches together on wooden benches outside when the weather allowed. They taught me to roll cigarettes, though I never developed the taste for them. They told me about their boyfriends, their families, their dreams of something better. I listened. I didn't have much to contribute. My life was small and mostly joyless, but it was stable, and stability felt like enough. I met Raymond when I was 26. By then I'd been working for 12 years. I had a room of my own in a boarding house. Nothing fancy, just a bed and a basin and a hot plate for tea, but it was mine. I'd saved enough to leave my aunt's house at 18, and I never went back, not even for Christmas. Raymond was a regular at the cafe where I'd started working weekend mornings for extra money. He was older than me by 15 years, a widower with 2 children. Michael was 8, Anna was 5. He was a quiet man, serious, with kind eyes and calloused hands from his work at the rail yard. He came in every Saturday for breakfast, eggs and toast, black tea. He always left exact change and a polite nod. One morning he stayed after his meal and asked if I'd like to go for a walk sometime. I said yes. We courted for 6 months before he proposed. He was honest about what he needed, a partner, a mother for his children, someone steady who wouldn't leave. His first wife had died in childbirth with their 3rd baby, who also didn't survive. He said he couldn't go through that kind of loss again. He needed certainty, or as close to it as life allows. I was honest, too. I told him I couldn't have children. The doctors had been clear about that after a surgery I'd had at 22. Complications from an infection, scarring, damage that couldn't be undone. I told him I understood if that changed things. He looked at me for a long moment, then shook his head. I already have children, he said. What I need is someone to help me raise them. I don't know if that was true, if he truly didn't mind, or if he was simply practical enough to accept what couldn't be changed. But he married me anyway, in a small ceremony at the registry office with his sister and brother-in-law as witnesses. Michael and Anna were at the wedding. Anna wore a white dress and held a small bouquet of daisies. Michael stood stiff and uncomfortable in a suit that was slightly too small. They both looked at me with cautious, measuring eyes, trying to decide if I was friend or foe, salvation or threat. I smiled at them. I promised myself I would do right by them. I raised Michael and Anna as though they were my own. I packed their lunches every morning, sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, an apple or a biscuit if we could afford it. I mended their clothes when they tore, let down hems as they grew. I walked Anna to school until she was old enough to go with friends. I sat up with Michael when he had nightmares about his mother, holding his hand in the dark until he fell back asleep. I taught Anna to braid her hair, to darn socks, to make a proper cup of tea. I helped Michael with his mathematics homework, even though I'd barely finished school myself and had to work through the problems on scrap paper first to make sure I understood them. When they called me Mum, I never corrected them. It seemed like the most natural thing in the world. Raymond and I were married for 55 years. We didn't have the kind of love people write songs about. No grand passion, no stolen glances across crowded rooms, no declarations under moonlight. We had the other kind, the kind that shows up every day, the kind that weathers silence and disappointment and the ordinary weight of time. We had arguments, of course, about money mostly, about how to handle the children when they were difficult, about his drinking, which was never severe but sometimes more than I liked, about my working too hard, taking on too much, never resting. But we also had quiet Sunday mornings with tea and the newspaper. We had holidays at the seaside when we could afford them. The four of us crowded into a rented room, eating fish and chips on the pier. We had the satisfaction of watching Michael graduate, watching Anna get married, holding their children when they came. We had a life. When Raymond died 4 years ago, a heart attack, sudden and merciless, I felt something inside me go quiet, like a door closing in an empty house. The world didn't end, the sun still rose, but it rose on a lonelier version of everything. Michael and Anna came to the funeral. They held my hands, they cried, they said I shouldn't be alone, that we'd figure something out, that they'd take care of me. For a few months, Anna called every week. Sunday evenings usually. She'd ask how I was feeling, tell me about her grandchildren, chat about the weather. Michael visited twice, once to help me with some paperwork, once to fix a leaking tap. Then the calls became monthly, then occasional, then mostly around holidays. I don't blame them. They have their own lives, their own families, their own struggles. Anna's husband lost his job last year, something to do with the company downsizing. Michael's daughter is starting university, and the fees are astronomical. His son is getting married, and weddings are expensive. Life is expensive, and I am old, and old people need things they cannot easily provide. So they found this place. It's not a bad place. I want to be very clear about that. I don't want anyone to think I'm suffering, or that I've been abandoned to some Dickensian nightmare of neglect and cruelty. The staff here is professional, even kind. The meals are adequate. Overcooked vegetables, yes, and everything tastes a bit bland, but it's nutritious and regular. There are activities. Bingo on Tuesdays. A woman named Margaret who comes to play piano on Thursdays. Old songs, the kind people my age remember. Sing-alongs on Friday afternoons, though I don't usually join in. I sit in the common room sometimes and watch the others. There's a man named George who talks constantly about the war, though I'm not sure which war or if any of his stories are true. There's a woman named Dorothy who keeps asking for her mother, who has been dead for 40 years. There's Harold, who stares out the window for hours without speaking. There's Edith, who cries every evening at the same time, though she can't say why. I am not like them, not yet. My mind is still mine. I remember names, dates, faces. I can dress myself, feed myself, manage my own bathroom needs. I read the newspaper every morning, slowly with my reading glasses, but I read it. I do the crossword puzzle. I write occasional letters, though fewer people write back these days. But I think about gratitude often. Not my gratitude. I was grateful for Raymond, for the chance to be a mother even if biology had other plans. I was grateful for every ordinary day, every meal shared, every small kindness. I was grateful to survive my childhood, to find work, to build something like a family. I think about their gratitude, Michael's, Anna's, or the absence of it. It's strange how people confuse obligation with love. I never asked Michael and Anna to feel indebted to me. I didn't raise them so they would owe me something in return, so that one day they'd have to care for me the way I cared for them. I raised them because they were children, and I was there. and that seemed like reason enough, because someone had to pack their lunches, and someone had to sit up with them when they were sick, and someone had to tell them they were loved, and I was the someone who was there. But sometimes, late at night, when the hallways are dim and the only sound is the hum of the ventilation system and the occasional cough from another room, I wonder if quiet love is simply too easy to forget. The loud kind, the kind that makes grand gestures, that announces itself, that throws parties and gives expensive gifts and makes sure everyone knows what's being sacrificed. That's what people remember, but I was never loud. I was the steady hand, the packed lunch, the mended coat. I was the one who stayed when staying was hard. I was the one who didn't leave, didn't falter, didn't give up even when I was tired or frustrated or desperately lonely. And staying, I've learned, is the most invisible kind of devotion. Do I regret it? No, I don't think I could have lived any other way. My life was shaped by what I didn't have. Parents who lived, a childhood that felt safe, a body that could bear children, a family that was truly mine. And I spent it trying to give those things to others, trying to be for Michael and Anna what no one had been for me. That means something, even if no one says so, even if they don't visit, even if I spend Christmas here, eating reheated turkey and canned cranberry sauce in a room decorated with paper snowflakes made by volunteers. It still means something. What frightens me isn't aging. My body has been failing in small ways for years. My knees ache when I climb stairs. My hands shake sometimes when I try to hold a cup. My eyesight is dimming at the edges. I lose my breath easier than I used to. I wake up in the night to use the bathroom 3, sometimes 4 times. I forget words occasionally, not important ones, but small words, connector words, the ones you need to make a sentence flow. I've made peace with all of that. What frightens me is the possibility that I've already disappeared. That when Michael and Anna think of their childhood, they see their father, Raymond's laugh, Raymond's strength, Raymond's presence. They see their friends, their school teachers, the house we lived in on Ashford Road with the cherry tree in the garden. But not me, not really. That I was background, necessary but unnoticed, like wallpaper or air or the floorboards you walk across without thinking. That I could vanish entirely, and the story of their lives would remain essentially unchanged. Last month, Anna came to visit. It was a Sunday afternoon, bright and unseasonably warm for November. She brought her youngest granddaughter, Sophie, a girl of 6 with dark curls and serious eyes. The child stared at me as though I were a stranger, which I suppose I am to her. She stayed close to Anna's side, clutching her hand. Anna chatted brightly about the weather, about her garden, about a new restaurant she'd tried. She asked if I was eating well, if I was sleeping well, if I needed anything. I said I was fine. I said I didn't need anything. Sophie stood silently, examining me with the brutal honesty children have. I tried to smile at her. She didn't smile back. Anna stayed 20 minutes. Before she left, she kissed my cheek, perfunctory, quick, and said, "You understand, don't you, Mom? It's just so hard to get away. The kids are so busy, and Robert's been working overtime, and I've got the church committee on Thursdays now." Her voice trailed off. I told her I understood. And I do. I understand everything. I understand that love is measured not by what you give, but by what others remember you gave. I understand that some people are built to be foundations, and foundations are only noticed when they crack. I understand that I spent my whole life making sure others had soft places to land, and now the softness is gone, and I'm alone in a room that smells faintly of disinfectant and overcooked vegetables, waiting for visits that come less and less frequently. I understand that the woman who raised me never loved me, and the children I raised have moved on with their lives, and there is a particular loneliness in having been necessary without ever being irreplaceable. I understand that I'm 83 years old and my story is mostly over, and whatever mark I've left on the world is so faint it will disappear entirely when I do. The nurses still ask if I'm comfortable. I tell them yes, because comfort was never really the question, and after 83 years, I've learned that some truths are too heavy to say aloud. What I want to say is this: I am not comfortable. I am not fine. I am not at peace. I am here because there was nowhere else to put me. I am here because love, even the deepest kind, runs out of room eventually. I am here because I gave everything I had, and it still wasn't enough to earn me a place at the table when I could no longer serve the meal. But I don't say that. I smile, I sip my tea, I watch the pigeons in the courtyard, and I wait for the next visitor who may or may not come, knowing that either way I've already become what I feared most: not old, not sick, not dying, just forgotten. I was the steady hand, the packed lunch, the mended coat. I was the one who stayed when staying was hard. I was the one who didn't leave, didn't falter, didn't give up even when I was tired or frustrated or desperately lonely. And staying, I've learned, is the most invisible kind of devotion. Do I regret it? No, I don't think I could have lived any other way. My life was shaped by what I didn't have: parents who lived, a childhood that felt safe, a body that could bear children, a family that was truly mine. And I spent it trying to give those things to others, trying to be for Michael and Anna what no one had been for me. That means something, even if no one says so, even if they don't visit, even if I spend Christmas here, eating reheated turkey and canned cranberry sauce in a room decorated with paper snowflakes made by volunteers. It still means something. What frightens me isn't aging.